Hello everyone, welcome to History at Bedtime. Tonight, we step quietly into the shadowed corners of ancient Greece, where temples gleam in the sun by day, and whispers of gods, mortals, and strange relics linger in the twilight. A world where objects could hold power beyond comprehension, where legends spoke of curses, and where the choices of a single person could ripple through time in ways both mysterious and unsettling. A gentle warning: this story may make the past feel startlingly vivid. You probably won't make it through this day without imagining the faint creak of temple doors, the flicker of torchlight, or the strange hum of artifacts that seemed almost alive. And that's exactly the point. Let curiosity soften the edges of the present and allow yourself to drift into the eerie, fascinating world of ancient Greek beliefs, mysteries, and the lives that intersected with them. Take a deep, calming breath. Let your shoulders relax. Let the day slip softly away. Now, let's ease into tonight's journey. Tonight, we will explore cursed relics, mysterious artifacts, and the strange fates of those who dare touch them. We'll wander through ancient temples, quiet streets, and storied halls, uncovering the delicate balance of superstition, myth, and daily life, letting the rhythms of history guide you gently toward reflection and sleep as these eerie tales unfold. You walk softly along the moonlit streets of Athens, though the marble seems to glow even in the dark. A cool breeze carries the faint scent of olive oil and distant incense from an overlooked temple. The air feels heavy with stories, as if each stone has whispered a secret or two over centuries. You probably won't make it through this day without bumping into some shadow of history, though that's part of the charm. Before we wander too far, a gentle reminder: if you enjoy drifting through these quiet ancient streets with me, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment with your location and local time. It helps me keep guiding sleepy minds through the past. Now let's ease into tonight's journey. Tonight, the streets feel alive, but not in the way you'd hope. There's a chill under the Acropolis, a whispering echo around the Parthenon, and somewhere in the Agora, a merchant tells a tale of a statue that no one dares touch. Imagine its seemingly ordinary piece of bronze, yet legends say that those who stole its gaze suffered bizarre mishaps: coins vanishing, livestock misbehaving, sometimes even their own reflection appearing distorted in polished surfaces. Ancient Greeks believed certain objects could carry curses or divine displeasure. The historian Plutarch even mentions a ceremonial cup from Delphi that, once drunk from by a haughty noble, led to a week of bad luck, and an embarrassing public incident involving a goat and a misfired arrow. You hear the goat's bells in the distance, don't you? It's almost like history itself is giggling. Most artifacts weren't cursed at all. Of course, many were just misinterpreted votive offerings or memorials to heroes. But some, like the infamous Ring of Polycrates, supposedly brought doom to anyone who possessed it, though historians still debate whether the ring was ever truly cursed or just a convenient tale for moral storytelling. Even so, walking among Athens' treasures, you feel a prickle of unease, a tingling like the breeze brushing against your neck. By now, you've probably noticed the shadows stretching oddly across the Acropolis steps. Statues that once seemed noble now appear slightly menacing, their eyes catching moonlight in ways that feel too deliberate. In some corners, inscriptions speak of theft and punishment, while others merely hint at offerings gone wrong, leftover scraps of food or oil dedicated to placate gods or spirits. It's as if every stone has a personality, and some have decidedly bad moods. The peculiarity of ancient curses isn't just superstition, it's human psychology wrapped in ritual. People wanted explanations for random misfortune, and a cursed cup or statue conveniently filled that gap. Even today, you might find yourself glancing over your shoulder after accidentally brushing against a particularly ominous looking urn. And yes, the agora is back, just like you remember it, bustling with quiet whispers and echoes of sandals on stone. Finally, remember that the Greeks themselves loved a story with a moral or a lesson disguised as a terrifying object. Statues, cups rings, even a painted mask in a theatre could all become vessels for fear. And as you walk slowly toward the dimly lit steps of the Stoa, your mind begins to drift, heavy with curiosity and a gentle dread. It's the perfect mood to slip into sleep, imagining the whispers of ancient hands brushing over stone, leaving tiny reminders of forgotten rituals. Now that you've settled into the quiet rhythm of Athens at night, let's consider the temples themselves. They are beautiful, yes, but also repositories of stories that would make even the bravest shiver under the stars. Take, for instance, the Temple of Artemis at Ephesus, not in Athens exactly, but revered across Greece. Some visitors claimed that certain votive offerings disappeared overnight, as if the deity herself had decided the donor's devotion wasn't sufficient. Others reported finding their belongings subtly rearranged, just enough to make one doubt their own memory. And then there were the masks of the theatre, elaborate, stylized, and at times strangely lifelike. Some actors swore that a mask could choose its wearer, favoring one and bringing an unexpected fall to another. Perhaps it was imagination. Perhaps it was the stagecraft of the Greeks. Historians still debate whether any haunted masks actually existed or were simply legends designed to entertain gossiping crowds. Walking past the bustling but now empty agora, you notice small trinkets left behind, tiny figurines, carved stones, and oddly enough, fragments of pottery inscribed with strange symbols. A few claim these shards could summon minor misfortune or protective blessings. One curious detail: sailors on the Aegean would sometimes carry tiny terracotta figurines of Priapus, believing they would ensure favorable winds. But occasionally, storms arrived with uncanny precision. Culturally, Greeks had an intense duality towards objects. They could be sacred or cursed, protective or dangerous. Consider the golden cups used in Dionysian rituals, ornate, seductive, yet occasionally associated with madness if overindulged in ritual wine. There's a hint of irony here. Humans creating objects to control fate, only to find themselves outwitted by them. It's almost like leaving a sticky note for the universe. Please be careful with me tonight. As you stroll, You might imagine yourself picking up one of these cursed or revered artifacts, perhaps a tiny statuette of Hermes, mischievous even in bronze, or a simple coin that feels too heavy for its size. Stories tell of thieves punished not by gods directly, but by social consequences amplified by superstition, a reminder that fear, after all, is a potent tool, as useful in ancient Athens as it is today. By now, the city seems to breathe around you, carrying whispers of statues, masked actors, and oddly behaving artifacts. Even the shadows cast by oil lamps stretch across stone surfaces in strange, deliberate ways. You notice a marble column ahead, carved with a depiction of a hero clutching a mysterious object, perhaps a key, perhaps a curse. The wind teases your hair, and you realize the nighttime Athens is a blend of beauty and gentle unease, perfectly designed for stories that linger in your mind as you drift towards sleep. The night has a rhythm now, soft and quiet, with distant dogs barking and the faint clatter of sandals. Even as you lean back against a column, the idea of cursed artifacts whispers in your imagination, gently coaxing your mind into a contemplative, almost drowsy state. And there, in the glow of the moon on the Parthenon, the line between superstition, legend, and history begins to blur, making Athens both inviting and mysteriously unsettling, just the way we like it at History at Bedtime. You step onto the narrow cobbled path leading toward the shadow of the agora's outskirts, feeling the stone underfoot almost hum with stories. Athens at night has a peculiar quiet, punctuated only by distant calls of owls or the soft slap of sandals against stone. And yet it feels alive, not with people, but with the whispers of history, the kind that makes you question why you didn't pay more attention in school. You probably won't make it through this section without a shiver or two, but that's the fun part. The Greeks were oddly fond of attributing misfortune to objects, a habit that made every trinket, every votive offering, and every ceremonial mask seem a potential harbinger of doom. There was, for instance, a bronze figurine in Olympia, small enough to hide in the palm of your hand, which supposedly carried the wrath of Hera if stolen or mishandled. Athletes who borrowed these little statues often returned home to minor calamities, though whether it was divine punishment or just coincidence remains debated by scholars. As you walk past a quiet fountain, you notice the water reflecting faint images of statues lining the pathway. Sometimes, travelers claim to see faces that weren't really there, a fleeting, blurred figure that vanished if stared at too long. Think of it as early Greek Snapchat filters, only slightly more ominous. And then there are the masks, which always seem to draw attention. Not only were they part of theatre, but some masks were believed to carry the essence of the characters they depicted. One mask of a tragic hero was said to whisper lines in a voice that wasn't quite your own, while another of a comic figure might incite uncontrollable laughter or awkward public moments when touched by an unsuspecting visitor. Scholars still debate whether these phenomena were superstition or clever psychological tricks used by theatre masters. Walking further, you see the outlines of a small temple tucked behind olive trees. This is where the strangest of artifacts reside, at least according to local lore. Ceremonial daggers that never cut properly, cups that seemingly refill themselves with wine, and scrolls that vanish if opened carelessly. You pause, imagining the artisans who crafted these objects. Perhaps they intended to amuse, perhaps to frighten, or perhaps they simply wanted to remind mortals that even ordinary items could harbor the extraordinary. The agora seems even quieter now, but you notice shadows dancing strangely around the periphery, forming shapes that remind you of stories you've read, or perhaps hope you've forgotten. In the distance, the sound of footsteps echoes softly against the marble, and the sense of unease grows gentle, almost like a lullaby, designed to keep you alert but calm. A curious tidbit: some coins from ancient Athens bore the image of owls, representing wisdom, yet there are records suggesting thieves of these coins suffered mysterious misfortunes, as if the owl itself exacted justice. The idea of cursed currency seems quaint, almost humorous, but in a culture that relished storytelling and superstition, it made perfect sense. So, as you wander this half-lit city, you begin to see the recurring theme. The Greeks loved a story. They feared the consequences of their own imagination, and they found delight in objects that blurred the line between reality and legend. It's the perfect prelude for the next winding paths and darker corners of Athens' night. You continue along the olive-shaded paths, and the scent of night-blooming flowers mingles with a faint tang of stone and incense. Somewhere nearby, a temple bell rings, though perhaps it's the wind or your imagination. Athens has a way of making you second-guess what's real. A subtle game the city plays with anyone walking these streets after dusk. You probably won't make it through this section without noticing just how easily fear and curiosity mingle. In this part of town, we meet the lesser-known cursed artifacts, the ones tucked away from public view but infamous in whispered tales. Take, for example, the mysterious figurines of Harpocrates, the god of silence, small, delicate, and intended as gifts to invoke protection. Some claim they brought exactly the opposite. Secrets revealed, quarrels ignited, and an occasional argument over who had the right to possess them. Historians still debate whether these figurines were truly cursed or simply stories exaggerated by rival families. Nearby, a theatre ruin reminds you of the masks once left behind by actors after performances. One mask, depicting a satyr, was reportedly found decades later, unchanged, in a corner of the stage. Yet visitors claimed it had moved from its original spot, sometimes appearing in the audience, as if observing silently. The idea of inanimate objects exhibiting willpower seemed ridiculous, and yet, here, it's entirely believable. Your attention drifts to the fountains glimmering under moonlight. The water seems ordinary at first glance, but stories speak of small metal cups left in the water, only to vanish by morning, sometimes replaced with coins inscribed with messages or warnings. Perhaps it's the work of mischievous humans, perhaps a benign deity playing games. Either way, it's the kind of detail that lodges in your imagination and refuses to let go. Another oddity: the bronze eye charms carried by sailors and merchants, supposedly to ward off evil or envy. Some accounts claim that those carrying multiple charms were more prone to accidents, as if too many layers of protection invite misfortune. You chuckle softly, imagining a Greek merchant juggling charms while walking along the docks, praying not to trip over a stray amphora. By now, the streets seem to lean closer, shadows stretching unnaturally long, yet the atmosphere isn't threatening. It's oddly comforting, like dipping into a storybook of ancient warnings and lessons wrapped in myth. You notice a peculiar coin embedded in the cobblestones, a reminder of owls, Hippocrates, and those mischievous satyr masks. Every artifact here is a character in a story that may be half truth, half imagination, yet fully entertaining. And so, as your footsteps echo softly against the stone, you sense the city's duality. Athens, a cradle of wisdom, philosophy, and democracy, also harbors artifacts and tales designed to unsettle. It's a delicate balance, like a lullaby with slightly eerie undertones, perfect for a mind preparing to drift into sleep. Here at the crossroads of legend and reality, curiosity and caution mingle seamlessly, inviting you to continue exploring gently, dreamily, through the night. You follow a narrow alley lined with weathered stucco walls, their cracks catching silver moonlight like veins of memory. The air is calm, but your senses tingle as if the stones themselves are whispering secrets. You probably won't make it through this section without imagining shadows moving just a little too deliberately. It's here that the city's relationship with cursed artifacts grows more personal. One such artifact is the famed chalice of Delphi, rumored to have been used in obscure rituals by lesser-known priests. The cup itself is elegant, adorned with symbols that appear to shift if stared at for too long. Patrons who drank from it supposedly experienced vivid, prophetic dreams, some enlightening, others unsettling. Scholars still debate whether these visions were divine insight, psychological suggestion, or just very bad indigestion. Nearby, you notice the faint outline of a ceramic jar, half buried in dust and time. Locals once called it the Jar of Whispers, claiming that if you pressed your ear to it at night, you could hear the last words of those who had handled it centuries before. Oddly, it wasn't always words of warning. Sometimes it was laughter, or even the faint sound of a harp. This mixture of eeriness and absurdity seems very Greek, doesn't it? Remember the masks from earlier? Well, the mask of the morning Manad is said to induce dreams where you wander forests of marble columns, following unseen dancers, unsure if you are a spectator or part of the ritual. Archaeologists confirm the mask existed, but what it did remains uncertain. You stroll past a small shrine where offerings of oil and bread glimmer like tiny lanterns. These simple gifts were intended to placate restless spirits, said to linger near certain cursed objects. It's easy to imagine someone in the crowd spilling oil and immediately slipping, blaming the object for misfortune. All while a nearby philosopher mutters, humans have a strange way of creating gods to cover accidents. A quirky note, some coins, stamped with Hermes' image, were tossed into fountains to gain speed in travel and fortune in the business. Curiously, these same coins were sometimes found years later under beds or in attics, far from where they were thrown. Theories range from playful spirits to simple human forgetfulness, but it adds a delightful unease to the night. So, as you wander this quiet city of stone and shadow, you see a pattern. Objects meant to guard, protect, or amuse often came with stories of consequences just absurd enough to make you think twice. The line between superstition and psychology is delightfully blurred, like candlelight flickering against marble walls, coaxing you further into the night. You round a corner, and the sound of water lapping against stone becomes more pronounced, echoing through a series of small aqueducts. Athens at night has a rhythm of its own, soft, continuous, slightly unsettling. If you dwell too long on the shadows, you probably won't make it through this section without imagining the whispers of the past brushing against your shoulder. In this quieter part of the city rests the obsidian dagger of Naxos, a ceremonial blade rumored to have been used in private rites. Though no records confirm its exact purpose, travelers and later owners claim it caused minor accidents like tripping or dropping objects whenever left unattended. Scholars remain divided on whether these were true curses or just the heightened anxiety of handling something ancient and shiny. Nearby, a wooden box covered in intricate carvings lies forgotten in the corner of a neglected temple. The box of forgotten hymns supposedly opens only to those who speak the correct secret phrase. Most passers-by report hearing faint chanting, though sometimes it's just the wind. One can't help but imagine an overzealous priest giggling somewhere, all frustrating the perfect blend of fear and curiosity centuries in advance. You spot a pair of bronze sandals left like offerings. They were intended to appease the spirits of lost travelers. Yet, some legends suggest that stepping near them at night caused disorientation. One might suddenly find themselves wandering an alley they've crossed a dozen times before, unsure which direction leads home. Maybe it's superstition. Maybe it's just Athens' clever architecture. An amusing detail: the votive owl figurines, tiny, serious-looking sculptures, were believed to protect scholars from sleepless nights and poor judgment. Ironically, those who collected too many sometimes reported inexplicable headaches, leading to jokes about owls attacking from too many angles. As your eyes adjust to the shadows, you notice subtle carvings on the marble walls, images of mythical beasts, of gods with knowing smiles, of mortals frozen mid-action. It's as though the city itself watches, gently, without malice. Every artifact, every whispered story, every shadow plays a part in Athens' nocturnal theatre. The line between a simple walk and a step into legend has dissolved entirely. And so, as you pass beneath an archway, you feel the night embrace you, its airy humor and gentle warnings winding around your thoughts, encouraging curiosity while coaxing a calm, watchful attentiveness. You begin to see why the Greeks loved to tell these stories. Objects, whispers, and shadows all work together to craft a narrative that is as unsettling as it is mesmerizing, perfect for letting the mind drift along ancient cobblestones in search of rest. You step onto a wider plaza now, where the stone tiles have been polished by centuries of bare feet and the occasional donkey cart. The air is filled with the faint scent of olive oil lamps, mingling with the cooler aroma of evening jasmine. You probably won't make it through this part without imagining eyes watching from the shadows. But don't worry, they're probably just cats or very attentive spirits. In the center of the plaza sits a curious object, the Mirror of Focus, a handheld bronze mirror that ancient texts claim could reflect not your face, but your inner misfortune. Patrons who gazed too long reportedly saw not themselves, but their fears, sometimes mundane, sometimes wildly imaginative. Historians still debate whether the mirror ever existed or if the tales were merely cautionary fables crafted to keep young pranksters from stealing shiny things. Nearby, a cluster of ivory dice lies scattered across the ground, remnants of past games. These weren't ordinary dice. They were blessed or cursed in ceremonies intended to sway fortune in gambling and fate. Oddly, legends suggest that dice rolled in anger or jealousy would mysteriously vanish, only to appear later in odd locations, like the roof of a temple or a neighbor's olive press. It's a little like losing your keys, except with a dash of divine humor. Remember the jar of whispers from earlier? Well, there's a similar artifact here called the Censer of Quiet Words. It releases fragrant smoke that supposedly carries messages to the gods, or just makes the air smell strangely like roasted herbs, which can be confusing if you're hoping for prophecy. One eccentric account claims that if you leaned too close, the smoke might tickle your thoughts and make you confess secrets aloud, much to your own embarrassment. And just when you think the plaza is empty, you notice faint carvings of mythic battles along the walls. Heroes locked in combat, gods observing with bemused expressions, and animals caught mid-leap. These images, while serene in the daytime, gain a slightly more mischievous quality in the silver light of night. An amusing note: small coins with Athena's owl were sometimes pinned to the feet of statues to ensure wisdom. Occasionally, these coins would appear weeks later in the most inconvenient places: sandals, laundry baskets, even jars of honey. People whispered that the gods had a sense of humor, or perhaps Athena herself enjoyed a little mischief. The plaza, with its mix of fear, curiosity, and sly amusement, sets the stage for deeper mysteries. As you walk past, you sense that every artifact, shadow, and carved image is carefully orchestrated to keep the night alive, getting your mind to wonder while coaxing a gentle, attentive calm. You wander into a narrow colonnade, the columns stretching like silent sentinels beneath the dim glow of lamps. The stone beneath your feet is cool, and the air carries a faint metallic scent, perhaps from the city's fountains, or perhaps from something older, lingering in the marble. You probably won't make it through this section without glancing over your shoulder, half expecting the past to step forward. A prominent artifact rests against a pillar, the helmet of the wailing hoplite, worn by soldiers in ceremonial parades. The helmet is said to echo faint groans of courage and caution, enough to unsettle anyone alone at night. Archaeologists confirm the helmet's existence, but whether it ever truly wailed remains uncertain. Nearby, you spy a lyre of forgotten melodies, strings slightly frayed and tarnished with age. It was once believed to carry the voice of past musicians, their songs influencing dreams and memories. Some travelers claim to hear music drifting from it on quiet nights, though skeptics argue it's just the wind bending through cracks and columns, creating a melody from thin air. Not far off, a small statue known as the Laughing Satyr sits in an alcove. Its smile seems playful, but some swear it moves slightly when unobserved, tilting its head or shifting its gaze to follow passers-by. You notice the irony. A creature famed for chaos, here carefully sculpted to inject a touch of whimsy into the city's more serious spookiness. A weird cultural tidbit. In certain neighborhoods, locals place tiny lead charms in the corners of homes to keep spirits at bay, often inscribed with nonsense syllables meant to confuse any wandering ghosts. Oddly, these charms sometimes show up years later on rooftops or in the fountains, leaving scholars scratching their heads. And a dry, lightly sarcastic thought drifts across your mind. The Greeks clearly had a knack for making even a casual walk at night feel like an immersive theater of history, superstition, and humor. You glance back at the colonnade's shadows, half expecting the artifacts themselves to chuckle at your cautious curiosity. With every step, the colonnade, lined with whispering artifacts and playful carvings, deepens your sense of calm alertness. You begin to see the night not as something to fear, but as a carefully composed narrative, guiding your mind along ancient stones, inviting both wonder and gentle amusement before sleep finally calls you onward. You find yourself walking along a quiet street, flanked by modest houses with clay rooftops that glow faintly in the moonlight. The air smells faintly of roasted barley and faint incense from a nearby shrine. You probably won't make it through this stretch without imagining footsteps echoing behind you. But remember, echoes are usually harmless, unless you've angered a minor spirit, which is unlikely. At the corner, a peculiar bronze lamp of endless shadows rests in a shallow niche. When lit, its flame supposedly casts shadows that move independently, reenacting past misdeeds or imagined crimes. Art historians have confirmed the lamp's existence in several excavations, but whether the shadows ever truly danced is still debated. A contemporary scholar once described it as the world's oldest cinematic special effect, though perhaps with less popcorn. Just opposite, you notice a box of whistling bones, roughly the size of a modern shoebox. Open it, and the tiny bones inside are said to whisper cryptic advice or complaints, depending on the owner's mood. Some locals swore it could solve disputes, while others claimed it simply made people uneasy, which is a fair point if you're easily startled. Remember the lyre of forgotten melodies from the colonnade, its distant cousin, the pipe of echoed lament, is tucked under a nearby arch. Rumor holds that when someone plays it, it records not just the sound, but the unspoken sorrows of anyone within earshot. Weirdly, similar instruments have been found across various city ruins, hinting at a widespread fascination with capturing human emotion in musical form. A humorous aside. In certain households, people would attach tiny, fake eyes to vases, thinking it would trick mischievous spirits. Imagine the relief of spirits everywhere, fooled by a clay eyeball. Oddly, archaeologists have found thousands of these eye vases with no other practical purpose, ancient optical illusions for the soul, if you will. As you move along, the street's quiet rhythm, punctuated by the occasional rustle of wind through olive trees, seems to coax your senses into calm observation. Each artifact, shadow, and whimsical superstition becomes part of the night's subtle symphony, guiding your mind gently toward both curiosity and rest. You now approach a small plaza with a central fountain, its water shimmering under the moon. You probably won't make it through without noticing the delicate play of reflection and shadow. And that's exactly the point. The ancients understood the hypnotic power of water, as much for calm as for mischief. In the fountain's center rests a golden mask of the silent oracle, rumored to show glimpses of truths too strange or inconvenient to speak aloud. Historians confirm the mask was real, likely used in ritual performances, but whether it revealed hidden truths or simply encouraged dramatic acting is still a mystery. The mask's polished surface gleams under the night sky, inviting, mocking, and strangely comforting, all at once. Nearby, a set of iron clocks sits idly on the fountain's edge. These weren't ordinary clocks. They were crafted to measure hours of misfortune, a playful, if slightly unnerving, way of marking time. The gears are intricate, almost absurdly complex for the era, and some say they were designed more to impress than to tell time, which makes perfect sense if you enjoy mechanical elegance with a hint of superstition. A minor but delightful curiosity. The Book of Invisible Ink lies half buried beneath a fountain stone. Supposedly, the ink only appears under the light of a specific constellation. Scholars still debate whether the book was ever meant to be read or was simply an elaborate toy to impress aristocrats with nothing better to do. And, in a whimsical callback, you notice a tiny replica of the laughing satyr from the colonnade perched on a fountain ledge. It leans slightly forward, as if amused by the nightly rituals of those who pass, reinforcing the idea that humor and mischief were as much a part of Greek superstition as fear. You wander into a twilight-lit gallery where the walls are lined with masks of slightly too wide smiles. You probably won't make it through without imagining a theatrical troupe of jesters wandering the streets of Athens, each mask exaggerating emotions just a little too much. Historical records show Greek theatre often used masks to convey emotion, yet whether some masks were intentionally unsettling or purely functional remains debated. You reach out and trace the carved wood, imagining an actor pausing mid-performance to wink at the audience. On a pedestal sits the Amphora of Whispered Lies, its painted scenes seemingly innocuous, yet each tells a story with subtle contradictions. Scholars have found amphorae used for both daily storage and ceremonial purposes, though the idea of encoding playful falsehoods is still uncertain. You tilt it in your hands, picturing a merchant whispering to his friend, "Trust me, it's just a little off, nothing sinister." Nearby, the Staff of Gentle Misfortune leans against a column. It doesn't cause real harm, but legend says anyone who leans on it might misplace a small item like sandals, pens, or a slightly annoyed pet owl. Historians note references to talismans meant to teach humility or patience, yet their efficacy is still debated. You imagine a philosopher gently sighing as his scroll slides to the floor, muttering, "I should have paid attention." At the corner, the Mirror of Subtle Mockery reflects perfectly normal images, but occasionally adds a mischievous wink or tilt to one's eyes. Mirrors existed in Greece and were polished bronze rather than glass, though the idea of playful optical illusions is still uncertain. You grin at the thought of an ancient noble examining themselves, noticing a tiny smirk in the reflection, and chuckle softly. Finally, the lantern of half-remembered dreams casts shadows that mimic but slightly distort surrounding objects. Some suggest it was a tool for storytelling or meditation, yet whether it influenced imagination intentionally remains debated. You watch the shifting silhouettes, imagining yourself as a Greek child hiding from imaginary monsters, heart lightly racing, and then softly exhaling as comfort returns. You step into the final room, the chamber of laughing relics, where objects hum with a quiet, almost imperceptible amusement. You probably won't make it through without a small grin. The artifacts radiating both curiosity and subtle humor. Among them, the cushion of misplaced thoughts sits invitingly. Anything placed upon it seems slightly askew when retrieved. Historians note the existence of similar household items meant to provoke mindfulness, though whether they were practical or playful remains debated. You gently imagine sitting on it, noticing your own ideas wobbling just slightly before settling. Nearby, the scroll of read-in histories unrolls itself lazily. Scenes of battles, festivals, and daily life shimmer and shift, hinting that stories themselves were playful, mutable, and subjective. Greeks often recounted history orally with embellishments, yet the intentional creation of slightly wrong records is still uncertain. You imagine a storyteller nodding, whispering to a child, "Memory is a friend who likes to tease." At the center, the statue of half-remembered heroes stands tall, figures frozen mid-stride, eyes slightly misaligned, faces almost smiling. Similar statues adorned sanctuaries and public spaces, though whether these minor distortions were accidents or intentional artistry remains debated. You picture citizens passing by, catching the gentle humor in heroic poses and quietly laughing. On the far shelf, the cup of almost forgotten toasts waits. A sip would, legend says, bring slight amusement or a fleeting memory, enough to nudge a reflective grin. Ancient Greeks celebrated communal drinking, yet the effect of this cup is still uncertain. You imagine raising it to an invisible friend and softly whispering, "Here's to mischief and memory." Finally, the fountain of southern giggles trickles near the door, water sparkling as if amused. You lean close, listening to the gentle, whimsical melody, feeling the cumulative comfort of all the rooms you've passed. Shadows dance slightly out of sync, laughter echoes softly, and for a moment the ancient world feels present and alive, as if smiling alongside you. You take a final deep breath, settling into the gentle rhythm of time and imagination. Now, let your mind drift as you leave the chamber of laughing relics. You feel the smooth stone beneath your fingertips, warm from centuries of sun, carrying whispers of forgotten hands that shaped them. Shadows stretch gently across the floor, lengthening like soft blankets tucked around your thoughts. Every artifact, every painting, every slightly skewed reflection rests in serene stillness, and you imagine the laughter and curiosity that once moved through these rooms. The air carries faint aromas, aged parchment, polished bronze, and a hint of olive oil, blending into a calm, grounding scent that encourages your chest to rise and fall with ease. You picture yourself walking slowly through sun-dappled courtyards, the gentle sounds of water and whispers guiding your steps. Time becomes pliable, stretching and bending like the soft lines in the murals, inviting you to release tension with each breath. Above, the sky softens into a velvety indigo, the first stars of evening peeking gently through the air. Their faint glow mirrors the twinkle of humor, playfulness, and ingenuity left behind by artisans who knew that life, even in its solemnity, deserved a touch of whimsy. You hear faint echoes of laughter, not loud, not demanding attention, but comforting, familiar, a gentle companion to your thoughts. You let go of every expectation, every rigid idea of what must be seen or done. Instead, you drift with the quiet music of the fountains, the soft murmur of the shadows, and the playful energy embedded in every relic. The world narrows to this space, this gentle pause, where imagination stretches freely and curiosity softens into calm. With one last deep breath, you feel the pulse of history. Art and whimsy settle into your bones, a quiet lullaby that carries you into stillness. Let your eyelids grow heavier, your thoughts slower, and let the subtle magic of ancient Greece wash over you, leaving only gentle wonder, soft smiles, and a sense of restful peace as you drift slowly towards sleep. Walking past, you feel the plaza's gentle rhythm, the soft lap of water, and the distant murmur of statues and artifacts, all contributing to a quiet symphony. Each step seems to slow your heartbeat. Each glance invites reflection, and every tiny story tucked in these objects reminds you that history can entertain as gently as it educates. You stroll into a narrower alley now, lined with shops that once sold perfumes, oils, and small charms meant to protect against bad luck or bad neighbors, which could feel equally threatening. You probably won't make it through without noticing the faint metallic glint of the mirror of misremembered faces leaning against a low stone wall. When gazed upon, it's said to show not your reflection, but a collage of every identity you've ever assumed in life, or perhaps just everyone you wished you could have been. Scholars still debate whether the mirror was purely symbolic, an artistic whim, or somehow enchanted, though ancient accounts suggest local storytellers love to exaggerate its effects. Across the way, a casket of silent bells sits, surprisingly unassuming. The bells never ring on their own, But legend holds that if someone with ill intentions approaches, they hum softly. Archaeologists confirm the existence of similar caskets, yet no one can fully explain their purpose. Were they a security measure, a joke, or a ritual tool? Your imagination hums along with them, conjuring tiny jingles echoing off the stone walls. You notice the subtle return of the bronze lamp of endless shadows, now tucked between shop fronts. Remember it from earlier. Shadows twist, and seem to whisper familiar, half-remembered secrets. Oddly, merchants here keep the lamp as much for entertainment as for any protective reason. Humor and superstition often share the same street in these parts. Nearby, a jar of whistling winds rattles faintly even without breeze. This minor curiosity, mostly decorative, was sometimes used to simulate messages from the gods during festivals. Archaeologists still debate whether it was a clever prankster's invention or a sacred instrument. The lines between devotion and mischief blur. Finally, a small statue of a sphinx with a comically oversized head perches atop a crate. Its exaggerated features make it seem half serious, half comical, and it's easy to imagine the sculptor chuckling while carving it. The ancients, you realize, knew that laughter and fear could coexist, creating a world that kept you on your toes and, more importantly, gently guided you toward a meditative attention to detail. You wander into a sunken courtyard, its walls covered in fading frescoes of gods and mortals intertwined in curious scenes. You probably won't make it through without noticing the obsidian dagger of whispered promises, half buried in sand near the fountain's edge. Though a ceremonial piece, it was rumored to record secret oaths made nearby. Historians confirm its ceremonial use, but whether whispers were ever truly captured or merely imagined remains a mystery. At the center, a chalice of floating dreams balances precariously on a pedestal. When filled with water, it supposedly projects shadowy visions on the surrounding walls. Some writers of the era described it as the precursor to a cinematic device, though whether it actually worked or was an elaborate party trick is still debated. The delicate interplay of light and water here feels hypnotic, almost like the courtyard itself is breathing. A few steps away, you spot a vase of hidden laughter, hatched with tiny figures front sin mid-giggle. Researchers confirm these vases were popular, but the precise cultural reasoning, whether to amuse, warn, or subtly ridicule, is unclear. You can almost hear the faint echoes of laughter from centuries ago, mischievous, teasing, and oddly comforting. You glance toward the pipe of echoed lament once more. Its faint presence is a reminder of how the ancients valued memory, storytelling, and perhaps a gentle nudging of the human imagination toward reflection. Nearby, a small marble owl, wearing a tiny cap, seems to watch you knowingly, combining wisdom and whimsy in a single, silent gesture. As you continue through the courtyard, the soft rustle of leaves, the distant drip of water, and the quiet hum of ancient artifacts all form a gentle symphony. Each item, from the whimsical to the mysterious, nudges your attention into calm curiosity, inviting both reflection and the slow drift toward rest. You follow a cobbled path into a shadowed arcade, the walls lined with stalls displaying trinkets of transient time, tiny hourglasses, some inverted, some oddly misshapen. You probably won't make it through without pausing at the hourglass of lingered moments, whose sand seems to tumble slower if someone nearby is anxious. Historians confirm the creation of these hourglasses, though whether any intentional time manipulation was truly believed is still debated. You can't help but smile at the thought. Humans, even in ancient times, were obsessed with controlling the uncontrollable. A nearby mask of conflicting expressions tilts slightly on a stand. When held, it reveals multiple emotions at once: rage, mirth, melancholy, perhaps all at once. A subtle reminder of the human condition. Scholars note that masks like these were common in festivals, though the idea that they could actually influence mood remains speculative. You notice a faint scent of incense clinging to it, a sensory whisper from celebrations long past. Across the arcade, the cloak of vanishing steps lies folded neatly on a bench. Some claim the wearer can move unseen through crowds. Others simply used it as a ceremonial garment. You imagine an ancient aristocrat slipping it over his shoulders during a procession, nodding knowingly at his friends while blending into the throng. A mix of mischief and practical showmanship. And there it is again, the bronze lamp of endless shadows, now flickering gently in a corner. Shadows twist in odd patterns, hinting at things remembered, things feared, and things absurdly mundane. You catch yourself chuckling quietly at one shadow shaped like a rather disgruntled goat. Humor, even in the most mysterious corners, seems to have been a necessary companion to the Greeks. Finally, a small ceramic frog wearing a laurel croaks silently, perched atop a shelf, a relic of playful artistry. It reminds you that the ancients didn't just strive for reverence, they also reveled in the absurd. Even the weightiest artifacts often carried a hint of whimsy, waiting for the observant eye to notice. You drift into an open courtyard where sunlight spills over mosaics, depicting both myth and everyday life. You probably won't make it through without noticing the chalice of echoed feasts, whose rim is etched with tiny, indistinct figures for unseen mid-cheer. It's said that if the cup is raised in a toast, faint whispers of past banquets can be heard. Scholars confirm the use of such cups in ceremonial feasts, though whether any whispers were audible or imagined remains uncertain. Nearby, the staff of shifting shadows leans casually against a column. Its carved grooves seem to warp depending on your angle of vision, creating playful illusions. Ancient records mention the staff in ritual contexts, but it's unclear whether its creators intended anything magical or simply admired optical trickery. You grin at the thought someone centuries ago was already fascinated by illusions, much like modern magicians. A little further, a vial of vanishing ink rests atop a stone pedestal. Some claimed that writing with it could reveal secret messages only under the moonlight. Archaeologists have recovered similar vials, though whether they were practical tools, symbolic gifts, or mere curiosities is still debated. You imagine an ambitious scribe scribbling frantic notes under torchlight, hoping to impress a patron or perhaps scare a rival. History's subtle humor is always lingering nearby, and there, just beyond the courtyard fountain, is the sculpted cat with eternal curiosity, tail arched, eyes wide, paw raised. Its craftsmanship captures both elegance and playfulness, a reminder that art in ancient Greece often balanced reverence with a wink. You can almost hear it beckoning you forward, encouraging gentle attention to the smallest details. Finally, the soft whisper of wind brushes over your skin as you glance back at the courtyard. The mosaics, artifacts, and shadows together form a quiet symphony, a blend of human imagination, ritual, and a touch of the absurd. Each object encourages reflection, humor, and ultimately a gentle drifting toward rest. You step into a narrow hallway where sunlight barely reaches. The walls adorned with tiles of forgotten battles. You probably won't make it through without noticing the faintly scratched inscriptions, dates, names, and oddly little doodles of ships with exaggeratedly large oars. Historians confirm these were commemorative tiles, though the purpose of the doodles, playful commentary, or simple boredom is still debated. You can't help but chuckle at the idea of an ancient soldier secretly mocking his own commander in clay. A pedestal displays the golden spoon of unending appetites, rumored to bring indulgence or minor misfortune, depending on the user's intentions. Archaeologists found several spoons of unusual size and weight, but whether any superstition really followed them is uncertain. You imagine a greedy aristocrat quietly testing it, realizing that perhaps moderation is timeless advice. Across the way lies the helmet of whispering winds, its interior lined with delicate etchings shaped like waves and gusts. When worn, it allegedly carries the faint murmur of far-off storms. Scholars still debate whether these whispers were naturally occurring echoes or a clever bit of acoustic design. You tilt it playfully and hear a soft, ghostly sigh, imagining ancient generals pausing mid-battle to hear the distant sky. Near the end of the hallway, the mirror of misplaced reflections hangs crookedly. It doesn't just reflect your image, it twists angles slightly, sometimes showing you with a lopsided grin or a slightly exaggerated eyebrow. Such mirrors existed in Greek households, though the purpose, practical or mischievous, is still uncertain. You grin at your own distorted reflection, noting that humor was just as essential to survival then as it is now. Finally, a jar of singing oregano perches on a shelf. It produces a soft, melodic hum when shaken, a curious fusion of botany and whimsy. Perhaps it was intended to amuse children or serve as a charming ritual accompaniment. You can almost see a small child laughing centuries ago, herbs spilling everywhere, while parents pretend mild exasperation. Even amid solemnity, humanity always finds a way to play. You wander into an open atrium where the sunlight bounces off marble statues, highlighting the amulet of interrupted dreams resting on a velvet cushion. You probably won't make it through without imagining a restless sleeper wearing it, hoping for inspiration, but instead finding fleeting whimsical visions. Scholars note references to similar amulets, though their actual use, practical, symbolic, or theatrical, remains uncertain. You smirk, picturing an artist waking mid-nightmare to sketch absurd ideas. A nearby table holds the goblet of contradictory toasts, whose etchings seem to change depending on who's drinking from it. Inscriptions promise prosperity while subtly hinting at minor embarrassment. Ancient texts mention goblets used in ceremonial feasts, but whether anyone noticed the etchings changing or merely imagined them is still debated. You sip an imaginary drink, enjoying the clever design, and think about how humor transcends centuries. Across the atrium lies the pouch of vanishing pebbles, its contents disappearing gradually, unless carefully handled. Archaeologists discovered pouches filled with small stones, but the intended function, practical, magical, or playful, is unclear. You imagine a mischievous apprentice using it to prank a teacher, the stones quietly slipping away as laughter is stifled behind curtains. Near the fountain, the candle of whispered secrets flickers faintly. It burns unusually slowly, and legends suggest it records the secrets of anyone who speaks near it, releasing them only when extinguished. Scholars still debate whether such candles were ever believed to function as described. You lean close, whispering a soft hello, enjoying the thrill of imagined mystery. Finally, the statue of perpetual surprise, hands frozen mid-clap and eyes wide, faces the courtyard entrance. Its expression feels timeless, a reminder that even in the most solemn artistry, Greeks infused subtle humor. You smile softly, sensing that the past is alive in these small, strange, and strangely delightful ways, gently inviting you to linger just a little longer in their world. You wander into a shadowed gallery where the walls are lined with scrolls of forgotten pleasantries. You probably won't make it through this room without noticing the faintly humorous marginalia, tiny doodles of people tripping over sandals or cats sitting on sacred altars. Scholars confirm that Greek scribes often added these whimsical touches, though the intent, satire, boredom, or a subtle critique of authority is still debated. You smile at a particularly exaggerated drawing of a philosopher spilling ink on himself, imagining him muttering quietly while trying to remain dignified. On a pedestal, the lyre of discordant harmony rests. It looks elegant, but when plucked, the notes seem slightly off, producing a melody that's both enchanting and unsettling. Ancient Greeks experimented extensively with musical scales, yet whether this instrument was intentionally designed to provoke curiosity or minor confusion is uncertain. You pluck a string in your mind and picture a small gathering of musicians squinting in mild disapproval while the audience chuckles politely. Near the far window, you spot the boots of perpetual stumble, not a literal hazard, but a clever metaphor in sculpted form. These boots were a popular motif, symbolizing the unpredictability of life. Some historians suggest they may have been used in comedies or theatrical performances, but their exact origin is still unclear. You imagine an actor dramatically tripping on stage, audience laughter echoing through an open-air theater, centuries ago. A small shelf holds the box of eternal echoes, a carved wooden container said to repeat your words with slight distortions. Similar devices existed as clever playthings or ritual props, yet whether they served practical purposes or were mere curiosities remains uncertain. You whisper a simple hello and picture the echo returning with a teasing twist, ancient Greek children giggling in delight. Finally, the vase of curious shadows sits in the corner. Its painted figures appear normal in bright light, but twist into odd, almost comical positions as dusk approaches. Scholars still debate whether these optical illusions were intentional or just a side effect of the artist's technique. You lean closer, noticing a warrior waving like he's saying hello, and laugh softly at the ingenuity, sensing the subtle humor woven into even solemn artistry. You step into an open courtyard where a single towering obelisk of whispered warning stands, hatched with cryptic symbols. You probably won't make it through without pausing to wonder if it ever truly warned anyone, or if it was simply a clever piece of showmanship. Historians note similar obelisks as markers of honor or memory, though the exact significance of the inscriptions is still debated. You imagine a young passerby tilting their head, trying to decipher the messages while hiding a grin at the strange shapes. Nearby, the cloak of shifting patterns hangs from a bronze rack. Its embroidered images subtly change when viewed from different angles, creating a mild disorientation for anyone trying to focus. Ancient Greeks experimented with textiles and optical illusions, but whether this cloak served a ritual, theatrical, or purely decorative function is uncertain. You picture someone walking past it, momentarily startled, then laughing as the patterns seem to play tricks on their eyes. At the edge of the courtyard lies the goblet of slightly exaggerated truths, its carvings illustrating events with subtle distortions. A soldier's helmet slightly too large, a chariot seemingly hovering mid-air. Scholars suggest these exaggerations may have been used in storytelling or ceremonial drinking rituals, though the exact purpose is still debated. You tilt an imaginary goblet, imagining the toast to truth with just a pinch of flair. Along the wall, the ring of misbarched reflections gleams faintly. It doesn't change your appearance entirely, but it teases. Your eyes may appear just slightly too high, your smile a fraction off. Similar art apps existed, though whether they were intended to amuse, confuse, or teach humility remains uncertain. You slip it onto an imaginary finger, chuckling as you admire your perfectly imperfect reflection. Finally, the fountain of slightly off-kilter sounds bubbles softly in the center. Water cascades with a rhythm that almost, but never quite, matches your heartbeat. Ancient Greeks enjoyed playful deviations in art and music, though whether this was a deliberate design or natural happenstance is still debated. You lean closer, listening to the soothing, slightly quirky melody, feeling a gentle connection to a civilization that found joy in both precision and whimsy.